Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR. We've got a lot to talk about going on in the Big Ten. No Zach tonight, but we do have Travis making his first appearance with us here from Spartan Savants. And then we also have Russ from the Boiler Express podcast. Travis, how you doing tonight?
Hey, I'm doing good, JR. Glad to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you here,
Yeah.
man. Russ, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you here. And we already got Dylan in the comments there going after you a little bit. So it's there we go. See, boo, Russ, boo.
Number one hater, number one fan.
Yeah,
one and
that's
the
all
same.
right. Got to have the ops. You got to have the haters. You know what I'm saying? So. Hey, we do want to remind you that the Big Ten Huddle does come to you every Tuesday night at 9 o'clock for football content. We come to you every Wednesday night for basketball content. You can find guests from all over the College Huddle on those shows. Sometimes we have guests from not in the College Huddle, just friends of mine that have done it on the other podcasts and things like that. So we have them on as well. But we do want to ask you to please do like and subscribe. We would appreciate that. Helps us out. And if you're ever thinking you have a comment on something we're talking about here, please do put it in the comments. We would love to get your thoughts as well and hear what you have to say. So without further ado, let's get into it, guys. All right, our first one, and this was my content that I made. So the top 10 Big Ten teams that didn't win the Big Ten in the playoff era. Now, I tried to be non-biased, okay? And I think I normally do a pretty good job of it, but I did put 3 Ohio State teams in the top 4. So I'm probably biased, and that's fine. I had a lot of Penn State fans upset that 2017 Penn State is not in here. If you are listening on podcast, I'll just read it off the top 10 for you really fast. But number 1, 2015 Ohio State. Number 2, 2022 Ohio State. Number 3, 2014 Michigan State. 2016 Ohio State. 2016 Michigan. 2022 Penn State. 2017 Wisconsin, 2023 Ohio State, 2023 Penn State, and 2018 Michigan. So some recency bias might be there, but I did base this off of numbers. I did have my own input as well a little bit, but what I did is I took the team totals based on averages because 2020 was a little bit skewed since some teams only played like 6 or 8 games and stuff like that. So I based it on averages of the season, how much teams, how much yards they had, how many points they scored, stuff like that. And then I also took into account their AP position at the end of the year and how many draft picks they had in the next draft. So, Russ, we'll go to you first on this. Agree or disagree?
For once, I guess maybe Sonny and I are back on the same page here. It definitely looks like maybe this is Ohio State fan just licking their wounds over the recent Michigan success. And they're like, hey, but guys, look at all these times we had the second best team in the Big Ten. Like we were so close. Like look at these teams. So, I thought it was a little interesting that, an Ohio State fan put it together, and there's a lot of Ohio State teams.
Hey, I did leave 2021 off. I did leave them off. They were terrible.
Well, so 2021 was actually probably my favorite Ohio State team, and it wasn't even on here because I played
because other teams threw so much on them.
Well, yeah. So I mean, because they had Garrett Wilson. I'm an offense guy, right? So they had Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Jackson Smith and Jigba on there. So and plus CJ Stroud, like that. I mean, that was a stacked squad. They just couldn't play defense. It's. I think I commented on X that this is just a kind of one last reminder that the Big Ten West was not great. These are all not just the second best teams in the Big Ten. They're really just the second best teams in the Big Ten East that just happens to also be in the entire Big Ten. So that was definitely a little bit of a punch in the gut there, and just a reminder that the Big Ten West at the top at least did not stack up.
You want my highest Purdue team that I had, Russ?
I mean, it's got to be the championship team. I mean, I don't know that that's too difficult. Maybe the team that actually beat Ohio State, maybe.
No, those were flukes every year, man. I'm just kidding. I'm trying to find Purdue here. I had them up high. It was 2021.
Yeah,
Purdue.
Yeah.
2021 Purdue. I have them. What is that? 25th. But that includes the winners too. So take away however many winners are in front of them. But But yeah, so yep, I'm already hearing it in the comments. Thank you, Sonny. I tried not to be biased. Anyway, here's a list of my favorite teams. Yes. This is why I'm bringing it on the show, because I'm trying not to be biased, but at the same time, I probably am biased, and I recognize that. So, Travis, man, you've got a team in there. 2004
Yeah.
Michigan State. I had somebody comment and say 2015 Michigan State was better, and I responded, "Well, you won the Big Ten that year.
Yeah, I was gonna say we made the playoff that year.
On
Yeah.
the list. Sorry."
Well, yeah, both those teams were while I was at school. While I was going to school there. So,
Yeah.
you know, I remember the 2014 team being all confident, like before the season. We're getting ready to go to the bars one night, and somebody comes in and is like, "Oh, Braxton Miller's out for the season. We got this wrapped up and everything." And then they're like, we're turning to JT Barrett. We're like, "Oh, he can't do anything." And then they just attack whichever corner was opposite of Trey Waynes for the entire game.
Oh yeah.
And they just went in and won that one. And then 2015, I felt like, you know, we went in there with our backup quarterbacks and everything against Ohio State. And honestly, I felt like Ohio State probably would have won that game if they threw the ball a little more.
Yeah.
I know it was crappy weather, but they just kept handing it to Zeke Elliott every time. And the one time they threw it deep, they ended up with a big play, or it was just like out of reach. And that was exactly what Alabama exposed on that Michigan State team that year. But in terms of the entire list, I mean, limiting it to just the playoff era kind of helps that, you know, there aren't many options that you could have left off. So, I mean, it's hard to argue with so many of, I mean, and Russ, to your point about the West, there's the only other West team I had down, well, two others, was the Minnesota 2019 team that won like 10 or 11 games and lost to, I think it was Iowa. Iowa was their first loss, and that's a hard place to go in and win.
Mm-hmm.
But then the other one was Wisconsin in 2014, which lost in the championship 59-0. So that kind of takes them out of the conversation, just in general. So,
yeah. So I'll give you guys my next 5 or 10, I guess, and see what you guys think. So number 11 literally was 2017 Penn State, no lie. So they were the ones right there on the edge. Number 12 was 2019 Wisconsin. 2014 Wisconsin was number 13. 2022 Minnesota was 14. 2015 Michigan was 15. 16 was 2019 Minnesota, and then 2019 Michigan, 2015 Wisconsin, 2019 Penn State, and then 2021 Ohio State. So there you go, your favorite team there, Russ. And then, hey, for Sonny, number 20, Illinois. 2022 Illinois almost beat Michigan that year. If Michigan didn't run that pick play, which, you know, I guess arguably it was a penalty or not, I don't know all the specifics on the pick play there, but hey, they almost beat Michigan that year, and would have had a pretty darn good year if they had done that. But yeah. So any thoughts on the next 5 or 10 there, guys?
I had a lot of those written down in my next batch. So yeah.
There you go.
You hit it pretty good. Yeah.
No, you got my favorite team in there, so we're good. We're good. I would say I was a little surprised if you're putting your own bias in there that 2022 wasn't number 1, just because they were a missed field goal away from being national champs. You know,
and I thought about that. But the thing that I went with was they got blown out by Michigan by so much, which who knows, maybe, you know, months from now, there'll be a big, you know, Michigan got every ban in the book or whatever. And then maybe that, you know, will change things then. But like, they got blown out by Michigan in 2015. Ohio State beat Michigan, and they just, I mean, I think they had like 5 first-round picks on that team or something like that.
Who 2015 Ohio State lose to?
Michigan State.
You're welcome, Travis. There you go.
Yep, there it is.
Yeah.
Michael Geiger
Travis's
on the windmill.
team,
Yeah.
Yeah. Travis's team with their backup quarterback destroyed my soul that year, because I thought we were going back to back. I thought we were going to win the national championship and going back to back. And in typical Ohio State fashion, they wet the bed. So
yeah, we thought we were screwed when we saw that Cook wasn't playing that day. It was, but hey,
we felt good going into it.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't lie. We felt good going into it, but I mean, that's why we love college football, right? Like, you just have these crazy scenarios where backup quarterback comes in. Like, look at what John Paddock did last year. for Illinois. Like he comes in, who was it against? Sonny can help me out. I think it was against Indiana, and throws for like 500 yards against Indiana that game. They both score in the 50s. Like I think it was overtime, or maybe it wasn't. It was close to overtime, but yeah, just an absolute crazy one. So, yeah, I need to do like a top 10 West teams of all time now, because Minnesota has 2 in there, or like since the playoff era. Which surprisingly, I'm looking at my list here. Iowa only has 1 in the top 20, but I think their stats
whatever
get
metric you
skewed.
used must have been offensive friendly because they don't get many points there. So
Exactly.
Well, and I think one of the reasons why the metrics are so favored for Ohio State is because even when Ohio State had bad defenses, they still went up against like Big Ten West teams that didn't have very good offenses, and it made the Ohio State's defense like look okay in the stat sheet, which then brought it higher. Like 2022 Ohio State, their defense couldn't stop anything against Michigan and Georgia, but when they played, Iowa, everything was fine. So, thank you, Brian Ferentz. Yeah. So, all right, we can move on to the next thing here. I just wanted to hold myself accountable. This is the big one here. Coach expectations in 2024. What do year 1 and year 2 coaches need to do this year? Russ, I know you have a lot of thoughts on it, so I'm going to let Travis start, and then we'll get into your big thoughts, okay? But Travis, so we have a number of new coaches in the Big Ten, first-year coaches. You're Jonathan Smith being one of them, Jed Fish. Washington, Sharon Moore, Michigan, Kirk Cignetti, Indiana, and then the year 2 guys, David Braun, Northwestern, which I guess, is that year 1 or year 2? What do you guys count that as?
I mean,
he's interim last
year.
He
did do a
he
full
started the
season. Yeah,
Yeah.
he did the full season.
Okay, so yeah, year 2, we'll make David Braun year 2, Matt Rule year 2, Luke Fickle year 2, Ryan Walters year 2. I'm not missing anybody there, right? That's all the year 2 and year 1 guys.
I think that's it.
I believe so.
Yeah. So, Travis, what are your expectations? I guess start with Jonathan Fisher and then give me Kirk Cignetti, Sharon Moore, and Jed Fish after that.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, everybody's given State a lot of props for pulling Jonathan Smith away from Oregon State. I mean, I like everything I'm hearing. I like what I'm seeing. In terms of expectations, I mean, there's been a ton of roster turnover, which obviously was after winning 4 games last year. I mean, it's kind of called for. You're not gonna win much with the same team coming back. I would say that there's a lot of people that, at least that I've talked to, that are State fans that think we can surprise some people this year and win, up to 8 games. I would say just getting back to bowl eligibility needs to be the first goal for him. Just be respectable. I mean, it's a winnable. The outside of the month stretch where we play Ohio State, Oregon, Iowa, and Michigan 4 weeks in a row, it's a manageable schedule to at least get 6 wins in there. And so I would say that should probably be the baseline for him. And then, he's probably going to keep building from there. And that should be the expectation with him in year 1.
Yeah, I agree. I think Michigan State's win total is at 4.5. So,
yeah,
I mean, if you go by win total metrics, it's pretty low bar.
I think the last time the bar was that low, we won 11 games. So
there you go.
That'll work.
Is Kenneth Walker on this team?
Unfortunately not. Yeah.
Nice
that we did. Yeah. Running back could be a bit of it. Nate Carter's pretty good, but he doesn't do what Kenneth Walker did.
Yeah.
In terms of the other guys, Sharon Moore, I would say, I mean, it's hard to follow up what they did last year, as much as, everybody loves to hate Michigan, myself included. There's just, it's obviously going to be a step back there in some capacity, especially with the number of guys that they have leaving and everything. And I honestly don't have high expectations for him, especially with, in terms of comparably to what they have been. So you look at their schedule, it could be rough one compared to what they've been used to the past couple of years over there. And then Indiana Cincinnati, I think it's Indiana. Doesn't seem to be a lot of high expectations from the football team most years. So I don't think he's facing a ton of pressure, but I do think he brought in a lot of guys that can help him out. There's a lot of JMU guys following with him, can kind of help him set up that that program and set the baseline for a few years to come.
Makes sense. Brian Myers is here in the chat. He says Sharon Moore is going 6-6. 2024 Michigan will change 2020 LSU for the worst post-natty season in modern college football history. I'm low on
totally
Michigan
disagree. Yeah.
As I say, I'm low on Michigan as well. But I don't think I'm going to go as low as 6-6. I definitely understand it, Brian. Don't get me wrong. I'm not arguing with you by any means. But I just think Jim Harbaugh was so much to them, and Sharon Moore. I mean, it's really, really tough getting your first head coaching job in the Big Ten. I mean, ask Ryan Day. Like, yes, it's been one of the best programs in college football. So like, obviously it's easy, but at the same time, like, it's high expectations. So I'm really interested to see what Sharon Moore does. Dylan says Sig is a fraud. It all goes back to that basketball game when he called out Purdue and Michigan and Ohio State, right, Russ?
Yeah.
But hey, he mentioned you with Purdue. He mentioned Purdue, Michigan, and Ohio State. So like, it's got to feel good to be mentioned with those guys, right?
One of the few times that you hear those three teams mentioned in the same breath. Yeah.
I love it. All right, Russ, give me your year 2 guys, and why don't you finish it up with Ryan Walters at Purdue. Go with the other guys first, because I know you have some thoughts to finish it up with Ryan Walters compared to some of the other guys.
Yeah, so I mean, are we talking about like fan base needs or to keep their job needs? Because
I don't know if any of these guys.
Yeah,
I mean, who do you guys think, like, if they don't go to a bowl game, who is on a hotter seat, Luke Fickell or Matt Rule? Because I think Luke Fickell is more than Matt Rule. I think Nebraska is willing to be patient with Matt Rule.
No, because the Nebraska fans, it's interesting how quickly the switch has flipped with them, because don't forget he lost 4 straight at the end of the season, and they weren't against Michigan, Ohio State, or Penn State. And all he had to do was win one game to go to a bowl game, and people were like ready to take him, burn him at the stake. And now all of a sudden they're going to go to the Big Ten championship game this year. So yeah, if they don't make a bowl game, I think he's going to be having a pretty
the
short
offseason cures so much when you recruit well. You know what I'm saying?
Like, quarterback's going to take them to the Big Ten championship or 10 wins or whatever they expect.
He is a damn good quarterback, but not that much. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's a really good quarterback, but I don't think he's 10 wins good enough, personally.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that Nebraska should be happy with the bowl game this year. I think it's interesting to me to see a first year coach, but he's had plenty of coaching experience along the way. And when you're 5-3 with 4 games left against, what was it, Michigan State, Maryland, Wisconsin, and Iowa, and you can't win one of those games to go to a bowl game, and you've got that much experience, I don't understand the level of hype he's getting when you've got a coach like Ryan Walters who went 4-8 in his first ever year as a head coach and had the toughest schedule per Pro Football Focus. So yeah, Matt Rule, I mean, I think for the fan base, they're going to want him to win at least 9 games, or they're going to be, pretty upset and wanting to see what happens in year 3 before they make a decision. And if he doesn't make a bowl game, this might be his, second 2 and done. He might be 2 and done. David,
but real talk, really fast, doesn't this happen every year with Nebraska though? Like, it happened with Scott Frost. Like, every single year you see people. It was me last year, and I was making a joke about Zach before we got in here that like it's his turn to drink the Kool-Aid on Nebraska, because it's almost like every single year there's like that one person in the media that's like, Nebraska is going to a bowl. I saw somebody say that Nebraska is going to the playoffs this year. Like, don't get me wrong. The Big Ten.
It's easier now,
right? Like, they're in good position to get somebody who's 2, maybe 3 losses get to the playoffs in the Big Ten. But like, that's still a super high bar for somebody who didn't even go to a bowl game last year. Which, look, I think Nebraska fans would understand that, but maybe you're right, Russ. Maybe they wouldn't be happy with anything less than 9.
Yeah, I mean, the College Huddle has been a lot of fun. It's been great to start to collaborate and hear viewpoints from all these different fan bases. But listening to a lot of these pods across the College Huddle, yeah, I'm calling out not just Big Ten, but everybody. You'd think that there's going to be like a 64-team playoff this year. because like everybody thinks they're going to the playoff
Yeah,
this year.
yeah.
It's crazy. All 18 teams in the Big
It's
Ten
so
think they're
true.
going to a bowl game this year, and it's like something's got to give. Like I get the offseason's all about optimism, but
It's so true. What were you going to say, Travis?
I was just gonna say, look at Matt Rule's history as a college coach at Baylor and Temple. Historically, his second year, he barely makes it into a bowl game. And the third year is when he jumps. He went 6-6 at Temple and 7-6 at Baylor in the second year. So I would say, bowl game would be the minimum expectation, or where the expectation should be.
yeah, and I
agree.
get that. To me, it's tough to look at 5-3 with those 4 teams left, and you couldn't.
Yeah.
With all your coaching experience, I get the trajectory. Like he's always kind of slowly built these programs up, but like 4 winnable games, you couldn't get one of them. Like Michigan State.
Oh, yeah.
No offense, but Michigan State won one game over the last 8 or 9 games, and that was Nebraska.
Yeah. No, you're 100% correct on that. I was just saying that's where the barometer has been for him in his career in year 2.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. As far as the other second-year head coaches, David Braun, I think he's bought enough goodwill with Northwestern that they could win 2 games this year, and they'd go, "Oh, it's fine. He's just got to get the program back in shape. We got a new stadium coming."
He was supposed to win 2 games last year, and he won 8. I mean,
I get that, but like,
Yeah.
I don't think Northwestern is. From what I've seen, maybe the Westlaw Pirates can inform us a little bit more, but like, I don't see them as a fan base that's like, one bad year we're going to burn you at the stake and let's try to bring somebody else in.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think he's got a little bit of a leash. Not that I expect him to win 2 games at all. That's not. I think that they fully should expect to go to a bowl game again this year. But and then Luke Fickell, I mean, they didn't have Michigan or Penn State on the schedule last year, and he got to 7-5, just kind of barely got to 7-5. He didn't. A lot of the games were not impressive, did not look great. Tanner Mordecai experience
should have won the Big Ten West last year.
Yeah, did not really work. They should have won them, and so like I'm nervous. I think Luke Fickell needs to go to bowl game, or they're also kind of like Nebraska. They're kind of going, hey, like in this day and age, you should be able to turn a program around much faster than 3 or 4 years, especially if you've got that pedigree of coming in as a coach that succeeded at other now Power 4, Power 5 programs. You should be able to turn around by the end of year 2, 100%. But to finish with Ryan Walters, as you said, expectations. I mean, I look at Purdue's schedule, and it's another tough schedule this year. We do have an FCS opponent at least that we open up with. So, I think our range is from 1-11 to, I think you could write a narrative for 11-1. Now I think that's like less than 1% on each end of those
playoffs, Russ. Playoffs.
I'm just saying we've had the pedigree of beating top teams at home. We got Notre Dame's at home, Oregon's at home. So that road game with Ohio State, I think that's like a 1 in a million if we were to pull something like that off. So I don't even think we have a prayer there. But I mean, we get Nebraska at home, and historically we've beat Nebraska 4 of the last 6 times we played them. Illinois, we've kind of owned that rivalry. Indiana, we're kind of back on top again with them. Oregon State's had a lot of turnovers, so we go out there. Could we knock them off? Notre Dame they've better success recently than Nebraska, but they're, like I said, they're coming to Ross-Ade. So, and this fan base is fired up. This fan base, we've sold over, I think, 40 or 45,000 season tickets now, which is the most since like 2007. So, despite a 4-8 season, they're very hyped on what could be coming in the season because, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but you look across our roster. And we've had a great class come in, right? I think it's like top 25 composite class, great transfer class. We've got Hudson Card, who's probably a top 5 quarterback in the conference, at least top half. You've got Devin Mockabee and Reggie Love, who is probably one of, if not, I would say a top 5 1-2 running back tandem, right? They both led a Big Ten team in rushing last year. You've got Max Clare, I think, is going to be one of the best tight ends in the country this year. If you haven't watched Purdue football, you're going to be surprised by the numbers he put up. He just happened to get hurt in his freshman year. Dylan Thieneman, All-American safety, right? Cajun Jenkins was, he was part of that 1-2 punch that led to Big Ten in sacks. And then we bring in a lot of talent in the defensive back. We just signed a 5-star Terrion Grant defensive back that's going to be able to play next year. We signed Nyland Green out of Georgia. Did you know like one of the top 5 transfer portal paths was from Georgia to Purdue? So you bring in, 4 or 5 SEC guys from a program that has been known to be among the best of the best in the SEC. I think that's why I get hyped and think, well, this could be your Purdue surprise and goes a bowl game. But then you look at that schedule and you go, man, it's going to be tough. Like, 4-8, your record is, you are what your record says you are, but I think there's more to it that, you look at this Big Ten, and if you talk about like the Oregons and the Ohio States, and maybe you throw like a Michigan, if you expect Michigan to be up there this year, if they only have 1 or 2 losses combined between them at the top of the conference, the rest of the conference is going to average 5 conference losses. So that means it's going to be tough to make a bowl game for a lot of these teams in this conference that think they're going bowling this year.
I think they're going playoffing this year, like we just talked
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
Get some comments really fast, and then we'll continue on. LFG, like number 3. Thank you, LFG. Yes, if you're watching the video, please do like the video. We appreciate that. 8 wins would be reasonable for Nebraska, given their schedule. Yeah, I think Nebraska fans should be happy with 6 or 7 at the least. 8 would be great. I think you're ecstatic if you get to 8. But yeah, I think at least 6 or 7. Michigan State beat Indiana late season in 23. I forget what we were talking about when I said that.
Yeah,
I like Fickle, but the schedule is no joke for Whiskey. Alabama is going to be the biggest barometer for Luke Fickle this year. If he competes and has a really, really good game, even if they lose, I'm going to be like, okay, great job by Fick in Wisconsin and things are going well. But I mean, if they just get their doors blown off, like, that's definitely not a good situation there. And then Dylan, got my season tickets and I'm ready. Yes, Dylan, you'll be looking for a billion. I almost said billion by Boilers. Boilers by a billion. That's what it is, right? That's his. Brad Myers' Purdue schedule is kind of rough. Going to need some breaks to fall their way to get bowl eligibility. It is kind of rough. Don't you play 2 Power 4 teams at a conference, Russ?
Yeah, we go to Oregon State, and then we have Notre Dame at home. So
okay,
and then Indiana State's our third non-conference. So
is Notre Dame after that Texas A&M game? I forget what week that is.
Texas A&M game for Notre Dame?
Yeah, Notre Dame plays Texas A&M. I think week 2.
It's week 3, I believe. I believe we have Indiana State, Oregon State, and then Notre Dame. So yeah, it should be after.
Notre Dame and A&M, I believe, is week 1.
Oh, is it week 1?
August 31st. August 31st.
Oh, okay. So they'll get a break game before they have to play Purdue. Is it at Purdue, Russ?
It is at Purdue. Yeah.
We're going to talk about stadiums here in a minute, and Purdue's going to be on my list as Russ knows. One more comment, LFG. Not a GBR fan, but I love DC Tony White. The strength of 24 Nebraska is their scrappy D. I agree. The worst case scenario for Nebraska, in my mind, is if they go 5-7 and lose Tony White. Like if the defense is just lights out again, like if they have like an Iowa type season where the defense is awesome. Well, Iowa the past 2 years, I don't even know it's been like this, but the past 2 years where the defense is just lights out awesome, and Tony White is like, if I can't get an offense, I'm not going to do anything here. And then Tony White leaves, and Matt Rule is back to square one again with trying to hire somebody. Not to say Matt Rule can't hire somebody, but yeah. So that's what I think. All right, so let's go through them really fast. You guys just give me a yes or no if you think that the fan base would be satisfied with this number of wins. Okay, you ready? Washington, Jed Fish, first year. If they get 7 wins, are Washington fans happy?
No.
Yeah.
Sharon Moore, happy. Michigan. If Michigan gets 9 wins, are Michigan fans happy?
No. They want double digit for sure.
They should be, but they won't be.
But they need 10, is what you're saying? Okay. Kirk Cignetti, Indiana. If Indiana gets 6 wins, are Indiana fans happy?
I think they're throwing a party.
Yeah.
All right. Travis, this one's for you. Michigan State. If Michigan State gets 5 wins, are you happy?
Probably not.
Okay.
I mean, it's an improvement, but I mean, anything less than a bowl is underneath program overall expectations.
It's an improvement from Mel Tucker.
Well, right. Yeah. We can't go anywhere but up. That's the great thing. But
yeah,
that's not enough of an improvement.
Yeah. No, I think so too. Guys, I forgot about Deshaun Foster. I need to write his stuff down. He was a first-year coach. UCLA fans are going to be mad in the comments about this one. David Braun, Northwestern, 7 wins for David Braun, Northwestern. They happy?
Absolutely.
Should be. Yeah. You win 7 or 8 games a year at Northwestern, you're basically a god.
Yeah. Matt Rule, Nebraska, 6 wins. Are they happy?
No.
They're not happy, no.
Not at all. They will not. No.
Playoff or bust. Luke Fickell, they win. All right, so they win 7 games again, okay? But they beat Alabama. one of those 7 wins is Alabama. They obviously drop a few they shouldn't drop because they have 5 losses, but they beat Alabama, 7 wins. Are they happy?
Yes.
I think with the schedule they have, yeah.
Okay.
Like they could be a team that is improved, but due to the schedule, it doesn't really show in the final record.
Yeah. I really appreciate LFG. He has given his thoughts on all of these as well in the comments. You're awesome, LFG.
Coming from a Purdue fan, the year we beat Ohio State 49-20 in that Tyler Trent game, we started 3-3 and our 3 wins were against ranked teams. And so that was frustrating because you sit there and you go, well, if we can beat the best teams on our schedule, why can't we take care of the other teams? But it was still a fun season to watch. So I think overall they should be happy. If they beat Alabama 7 wins, they should be happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. All right. Russ, your guys here. Ryan Walters, Purdue. Are you happy with 5 wins?
No.
Oh, I agree. I think
No.
he needs to at least go to a bowl game, especially bringing in
I
all
agree.
those Georgia guys.
I think, because the problem is, in the long run, I won't be incredibly upset. The problem is you got to start realizing in these rebuilds, like, Michigan State with your new coach and Purdue in their second year with head coaches, it's not just about going 4-8 or 5-7. It's what does the roster look like after you do that?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just,
Absolutely.
you got to start thinking about that result of, like, it's not just how you finish your season. It's what does the effect of your season have on your incoming recruiting class and how many guys hit the transfer portal? Because it's now you can transfer 4 times, basically 3 times, play for 4 different schools. So if you're not happy because you went 4-8, see ya.
So let me ask you this, Russ. Would you be happy with 8 wins, but you lose to Indiana?
Depends on when. If it's the day after the end of the game, no, I'm not happy. But if it's, end of the season, I'm like, you know what, 8-4 was good. Mason Gillis, I think, said something about it last year in basketball when we got swept by Indiana, but won the Big Ten by 3 games. It's like, I'd rather win the Big Ten by 3 games than get swept by Indiana, or than beat Indiana. So it's,
Yeah. I always think that's the toughest part. It's like you had a really good season, but you lost to your biggest rival. Like, are you happy? It's a difficult question. Dave says, as long as Minnesota fan Dave, been with us for a long time. We appreciate you, Dave. As long as Wisconsin loses to Minnesota, I'm happy. There we go. PJ Fleck beat Luke Fickell. You'll make Dave happy. LFG, like I said, he's giving his thoughts on all of them. Said no, Purdue's fans want 6+ or Purdue fans. Sorry, I read that wrong. Yeah, so I think that's the biggest thing for Purdue, me personally, and I don't know if Russ would agree or not, but I think you have to, like, you got all these Georgia players in there, you have to show that, like, you are growing something, you are building something, and kind of keep that cachet for Ryan Walters. I just talked about it with Sonny on the Illinois video we made. Like, Ryan Walters is getting a lot of the credit for guys like Devin Witherspoon and stuff like that, that went to the NFL. Not saying that guys like that he doesn't deserve the credit, but guys like Aaron Henry, who are Illinois now, they don't seem to be getting as much credit as Ryan Walters is, and he has to show that he can earn it. So let's just do Deshaun Foster really fast because I feel bad for neglecting them now. But UCLA, 5 wins. Are they happy? I think their win total is either 4.5 or 5.5. I can't remember.
No, probably not.
I'm sure that they beat UCLA. 5 wins, but they beat UCLA.
USC.
5 wins, but they beat USC.
I'll go yes. They should be. I mean, it's a rough transition to go from not just going into the Big Ten, but being a West Coast California team in the Big Ten. I think any 5 wins, you got to kind of take that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Foster was kind of an under the radar head coaching candidate too, so that's kind of
they kind of had to go with him.
Yeah,
it was such a late hire.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why I would agree with Russ. They probably should be happy with that, just given the circumstances.
I agree. Brian Meyer says, you might know this, Russ. Did Purdue upgrade the visitors' locker room yet? I remember Jim Hairball. We got a lot of nicknames in the chat. I appreciate it. Complaining about them. Did they update the visitors' locker room, Russ?
Yes, they have, and that's something that was actually going to be addressed. I may or may not be doing some kind of a state of the program type of a pod sometime this offseason. So just stay tuned to your socials. That's something that definitely will get addressed. There's been some shifts in the Purdue program, basically kind of happened with Mike Babinski and Jeff Brom kind of coming in. So yeah, the program's, that's why I think 6+ wins is the expectation this year.
Nice. Dylan, California's not a real place. We all know this. Yes.
Good point.
Normally I wouldn't stop for questions like this, but LFG's been so great in the comments. I'll give him this one to us. Do you guys know how capable the UCLA coaching staff is? Their O-line coach just came from the NFL Eagles. Their OC is NFL legend Eric Bieniemy. Yeah, I know they're capable, and I know they have a good staff there. I kind of question Eric Bieniemy because he was with Andy Reid,
Yep.
for a long time, and then he goes off. Was it the Commanders or the Raiders? He went off.
Commanders.
Yeah, and just kind of flopped. Which the Commanders are a floppy organization. So how much is that on Bieniemy? How much is that on Washington? Just is a bad organization. I don't know. I have to think that he brings a lot of good intelligence with him, obviously, from the NFL and that kind of stuff. I just questioned Sean Foster, first-year head coach, hired so late. That's just such a big struggle. I feel like it's nothing against him. Like it's such a big struggle. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, not to get too much into NFL, but yeah, Bieniemy, the narrative behind him this year was he was going to go to the Commanders to prove that it was also partly him that Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs were so good.
Mm-hmm.
And 1 year later, he's an offensive coordinator at UCLA. So, I don't think you even have to see what happened to know how it probably went, because the Chiefs won the Super Bowl and he lost his job after a year. So,
yeah. I mean,
true.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. I mean, there's no, and another thing is that this is about kind of like with UCLA, we're talking about is more like about the circumstances than it is what they have on the coaching staff. So they could have great coaches, but they're kind of throwing everything together on the fly as the season's approaching, and that's a difficult thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. LFG's pretty high on Foster, a better head coach than you guys realize. 24, UCLA schedule is brutal, so the team may improve, but the win total won't show it. So, all right, we'll be on the lookout for it, LFG. I appreciate you commenting and letting us know. So, like I said, it's not so much against Foster as it is just like how late he was hired and kind of the tough situation he's kind of in. But hey, props to him if he's able to make the best of it.
And like I said, sorry to the fan bases out there, but not all 18 teams are going to a bowl game, even though they might be deserving. Something's going to have to give. Unless every team goes 3-0 in non-conference, then 3-6 in conference get you a bowl game. But that's very, very unlikely.
Listen, when you add 4 good programs, at the very least good, I mean, when you add 4 good football programs to your conference, 3 that I think have the potential to be elite at times, maybe they're not elite every single year, but 3 that have the potential to be elite. Like, I mean, this is what you get in the Big Ten now. Like, you have some really good teams, and just because a team's 5-7 doesn't mean they couldn't go to the ACC and be 10-2 or 9-3. You know what I'm saying? Like this is how good the conference is now. So
absolutely.
All right, let's move on to the next one. Before we move on, I do want to remind you to check out Home Field. Home Field Apparel is where you can find all kinds of great apparel there. We do have a code in the description if you want to use that. So if you are shopping Home Field, please do use our link. We appreciate that. Helps us out. And if you're already shopping there, make the best of it anyway. So go check out Home Field. All right, guys. So most feared Big Ten stadiums. So a lot of people, what they do is they say, well, these are the best Big Ten stadiums. I don't want to ask you guys like your best Big Ten stadiums. What I want to ask is like for you and your team personally. All right. So me as an Ohio State fan, Travis, you as a Michigan State, Russ, you as a Purdue fan, like what are the Big Ten stadiums that you fear going to the most? Not because like, oh, I don't like the stadium or, it's a bad parking or something like that. Like, I don't want to know that. Like what stadiums do you fear your team going to the most in the Big Ten? I'll give an example. Like, I know there's a lot of really, really good stadiums out there, but it seems like every time Ohio State goes to Purdue, I get a little knot in my stomach where I'm like, I don't feel good about this. I'm not saying that Purdue's like the best stadium in the Big Ten or anything like that, but Ohio State has not had good history going to Purdue. And so at the end of the day, like they're kind of an underrated one where it kind of gives me a little bit of a knot in my stomach because I'm just not totally sold that Ohio State is going to win the game there every single time. Russ, let's start with you. What are some of your most feared stadiums in the Big Ten?
Well, so I'll think of it in terms kind of like what you said, like going to a place that you have a chance to win, but you just know it's tough to win there. And, I think about all the Big Ten West, teams that we've had to go battle on the road that, the rivalries we've kind of had with, Minnesota, Nebraska, Iowa, those teams, it's always, even though you might be having the better season, to go to those places and try to pull out a win, especially that, Nebraska has got one of the most storied, stadiums, and the fact that you go in and you can't see out that thing. Like it's a full bowl. It's not even like a horseshoe like Ohio State. When you're there, you're like in the thick of it, and they are crazy and they lock out away teams. Like it's a sea of red. And so you can go in with a better record and you still don't like your chances. So, Nebraska is definitely up there. And then, Iowa, of course, is known for, having a pretty good football atmosphere there. Those Midwest states where they don't have a pro team, their college team is their pro team. So they show up and they show out. And so it gets hostile, even though they might wave at the little children's hospital. It's not a nice place to go play. And then Minnesota, especially if you're playing up there late in the year, and you're out in that weather now, it can be some trouble up there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Minnesota is an underrated one. You never see Minnesota up there being talked about, but it is a stadium that you have to fear. You have to fear going into. Brian Myers says, I think Brian's a Buckeye fan. He says, been to 8 so far, taking the shoe out of the equation. My difficult ranking is Penn State, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, Northwestern, and Michigan State. Penn State. Like Penn State is really, really good. Don't get me wrong, but it is amped up even more when you're facing that wide out. In my opinion, best stadium environment in all of the country when the Penn State is having their wide out and they have a big game in there and they're really rocking it. There is no stadium better. Travis, your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, just building off of Penn State, that was one of the ones I had on my list. Yeah. I remember going, I think it was my freshman year of high school, went to see Michigan State and Penn State play at Happy Valley. And it was just crazy. One of the craziest environments I've ever been in. And we just got our asses kicked in that one. And it was just crazy. And I think I have written down here, we're 3-8 in Happy Valley since 2000. So not great. We're even worse in Nebraska. That was the top one I had. I think we've won once ever in Nebraska. So that's not a good start there. We hadn't beat them ever in general till 2013. So that's not great. And then Columbus is a tough one for us, even though we've come up with some upsets in there. We're 9-18 overall. And then with everybody coming in from the West Coast, from the Pac-12, I think it's a good opportunity to throw this in there that we have not won a true road game on the West Coast since 1957. Wow. So any of those games are just absolute automatic frightening. We beat Cal 19,
especially if you're going out there at night. If you're playing at night out there, I don't know if anybody's, I love college football. So I've been that guy that, you get home from the game, you might go watch Purdue play or Michigan State play. By the time you get done tailgating, you get home, you turn the TV on, and there's USC and UCLA playing, and it's like 11 o'clock at night on the East Coast. But those atmospheres at night on the West Coast are crazy. The Rose Bowl playing up there in Autzen, like it's Autzen Stadium, like it's going to be some crazy atmospheres. You have to go out there and play a night game on the West Coast, because as hard as it's going to be for them to travel across the country to a Maryland or a Rutgers, I think it's going to be even harder to travel out there and try to win a game.
Yeah. I have some 2023 average attendance that I thought was interesting, because I was just giving Minnesota their props, and they are fifth last in the Big Ten with 48,453. But it doesn't seem that way when you watch Minnesota on TV. So I don't know if maybe their average is going down by some of their cupcake games or something like that, but it doesn't seem that way. Joel Klatt put Oregon, was it number 2 or number 1 on like his most feared Big Ten stadiums now. They only averaged 55,895 last year. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That is middle of the pack. So 8th worst.
Purdue's got to
the
be in
Big
that range
Ten.
too, because Purdue showed out last year, even with their
Purdue is
record.
actually one spot higher than Oregon with 58,248. That was another thing that I was like, man, Purdue's having more fans there.
Showing out. Yeah.
than
I took my
Oregon,
dad to the Minnesota game after we'd gotten eliminated from bowl contention, and I was nervous as to what kind of atmosphere it was going to be. And it was like 90-95% full for a game that basically meant nothing. And I was like, dang, this program is behind Coach Walters for sure.
Yeah. LFG capacity of Oregon Stadium, it's not big. That was the thing I was going to point out after that is that I can't remember what the capacity is, but it's not as large as some of the other stadiums. What is the capacity for Purdue, Russ? Do you know?
It's only like 61,000, I think.
Okay.
Right about, yeah.
So
it's just right at
close to
60.
sellouts every single time. 3,000, less than 3,000 away.
The parts of the stadium that weren't really full were it's called the JPC section, which is John Purdue Club. They're the big boosters for Purdue, and that was pretty disappointing as a Purdue fan. As kind of like I'd say like a blue collar kind of an everyday Purdue fan. I would consider myself, like not one of those big money donors, to go to a game like the home opener against Fresno State and see pretty much every seat in the house full. But then you look at that little section where the nice, big money donors sit, and it's like 10% full, and you're just like,
really?
Come on. Like,
yeah. LFG 54,000 for Oregon. Appreciate that, LFG. I couldn't look that up during it. That's amazing. 54,000 capacity, and they average 55,895. So there's something. There must be some secret seats or something in there. But yeah, they can always squeeze a few more in there or whatever. But and another one that I'm going to mention, Ohio State hasn't played there in a long, long time, but Washington, the way they have that stadium structured, where they have the pieces that go over the top and all the sound just stays, like you hear players talk about how like the sound just does not leave that place. It's almost like just this well-made dome to where it just all the sound stays inside of it. Washington is another one that I'm not going to look forward to watching Ohio State play at, because the way they structured that thing, it's
luckily
unreal.
with the size of the conference, you only have to play there like once every 12 years. So
that's what I was gonna say. All these stadiums, we're not going to be playing there very much. So Dave says Minnesota holds 51,000. So Minnesota averages 48,453. So they're kind of in the same boat as Purdue there. We're only about 3,000 off of having a sellout each time. So you're big boys at the top, I guess you could say. They're also the biggest stadiums. Michigan 109,971 was their average last year. Penn State 108,409. Ohio State 103,792, and then the next one after that was Nebraska at 86,802. So those are kind of your biggest ones there. But I tell you, I hate every single time people talk about the biggest or the best stadiums or whatever, because it's normally just an SEC list, because the SEC has all these high attendance because they have the highest capacity stadiums. But I guarantee you, like, you would not want to go play at Iowa versus Mississippi State, or you would not want to go play at Minnesota versus, insert random SEC team here. I don't even know who to think of. Ole Miss, whatever, like you wouldn't want to go play versus some of those other places. But, that's ESPN and all the media giants for you, right? So, all right, let's move on to our final topic here. So this is one that I don't really have an agenda for. I just think it's really interesting. This is something that I do every year. And this is last episode, I was talking about the top 25 and how I feel like I personally feel like Washington is kind of getting screwed. And so this is where my thought process comes in. I don't want to just talk about Washington, but I want to talk about some of the other teams too. Like, you look at a team like Washington, all right? They have 40% returning production. That ranks 126th in the nation. However, they have a portal class of 8th. Now, portal classes can be deceiving because you can get a lot of players in there that brings your portal class up. But still, like, a lot of players are coming to Washington after they lost a lot of players. A team like Michigan has 36% returning production, 130th, and only the 80th ranked portal class. So you're telling me that Michigan, according to Joel Klatt last week, is 8th in the nation with a 36% returning production and 80th portal class, but Washington, who has a higher returning production and a 10 times higher portal class, they just don't have anything. I get Michigan has a few first-round picks on their team. Will Johnson, Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham, Colson Leveland. Don't get me wrong. Those guys are there. But still, like, who's going to be around those guys? I'm not saying that Michigan doesn't deserve to be in the top 10. I'm just saying if Michigan is up there, Washington should at least be in the top 25. That's my observation from this list. Travis, what were some of your thoughts from looking at these returning production and portal ranking numbers?
Yeah, so I mean, just off of your point, I would say that Washington has some plug and play guys in there, so that just furthers your argument even more, given that Michigan, you mentioned a couple guys, but we really don't know. When I was looking at the portal list, I would say it was kind of not necessarily shocking, but surprising that basically I was going through it and it seemed like almost like there was a Big Ten team, like every group of 5 teams had a Big Ten team. Basically, I mean, some of them, you get further down the list, it was a little bit off. But I mean, I didn't realize before I looked at that there were so many highly rated transfer portal classes in there. But some of them, like Michigan State, obviously needed it. I mean, there was just plenty of roster holes. I mean, until last week, I think we had like maybe two or three scholarship defensive tackles on our roster. So that obviously wasn't going to work. We got a couple commitments during that time. And I mean, it's just Oregon was another team that benefited. I mean, obviously big time on here. You can see it second, but they end up with Evan Stewart coming in there, Jabbar Muhammad, Dylan Gabriel, even Dante Moore. So they double dipping at quarterback there. We mentioned Indiana earlier with a couple of their James Madison guys, and with I'd say their transfer portal. I think it was important with their quarterback situation, with getting a Curtis Rourke, veteran guy from Ohio, and even though it was just a MAC school, who knows what role he's going to play there if he wins the starting job, whatever. But that kind of thing is good for their program. And then, I think Russ can speak a little more to this, but Purdue had a lot of guys coming in. I mean, they had a lot of guys going out too, but they had a lot of guys coming in. And, to his point earlier with the Georgia connection, that should help them a lot, I would think. It's just I noticed that, like, with their passing game, their receivers had kind of, not really necessarily a mass exodus, but it was a big part of big contributors from their team had left in that position. And then just building off that receiver thing in the transfer portal, I think it was a big get for Penn State to get Fleming from Ohio State in the portal. I mean, I don't know what the situation was there with him, but Penn State's offense really needed somebody like that last year, so he should definitely,
especially after losing Lambert Smith this year.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And then, just looking at the returning rate, that everybody has a high return rate right now except for Michigan and Washington, which is crazy. I don't think I've ever seen it like that. I mean, I haven't paid that much attention to it, but I don't think I've ever seen it like that.
Yeah, no, I think at the end of the day, like, you see a few teams on here that the high returning rate matches the high portal ranking. Oregon obviously leads this list, top 25 in returning production, and then second in the portal rankings. So that's really good for them. Nebraska, 20th in returning production, 59th in portal rankings. Portal rankings are a little bit difficult to see how well they can do at times, because you don't know if people are just bringing in depth, if they're bringing in starters, but still, like, that's good for them. Teams that, just really didn't attack the portal, you can see they had a pretty good returning production, other than Northwestern. Pretty concerned about Northwestern. I trust David Braun. Don't get me wrong. I don't know how you can't after this last year, but to only have 59% returning production, you didn't have a single guy go to the NFL, and only 120th in portal rankings. Like, I don't know. It seems like a little bit of a concern. And then one last thing before we kick it to Russ, because I know Sean is in here in the chat. Rutgers is definitely going to surprise. Took a decade to get the O-line and D-line to Big Ten standard, but a ton of people are sleeping on them this year. I agree. I think we talked about it when we had Larry on. I think that Rutgers, 8-9 wins is a very real possibility for Rutgers this year with the way their schedule is playing out. And then you think about the returning production rating is 72nd. They don't have their quarterback coming back. And if you ask Rutgers fans, they improved their quarterback situation. I don't know if you ask Minnesota fans that, if they agree, but
Yeah.
that's what Rutgers fans say. So at the end of the day, like, in Kirk Soraka, like, he got his quarterback, the guy that he had at Minnesota, and Athan Kaliak-Manis, and he had his best games when he was under him. So we'll see if Greg Schiano and his guys can capitalize on that. But Kyle Monangai, leading rusher in the Big Ten last year, coming back, a good offensive line with a good amount of guys there coming back. So we'll see what happens. Russ, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's Travis started touching on one of the groups, but two of the big groups that Purdue tried to get in the portal, they did a decent job of getting bodies at offensive line and wide receiver, because we did have a mass exit, especially at the wide receiver position, and then at offensive line, we just were not healthy. We could not stay healthy. And we went and got some big body dudes at offensive line to try to help protect Hudson Card, because you look at the Illinois-Minnesota games last year, and those were encouraging as a Purdue fan going into this year, because those were examples of what can happen if everything goes right.
Is it true, Russ, that Ryan Walters, he told the NIL to go pay more offensive linemen than receivers, and that's why the receivers kind of started heading out? That's what I heard. I don't know if that's true, though.
I'm not sure. I do know that if you're an outsider, you're kind of a casual Purdue fan wondering why there was such a mass exodus this year. You got to keep in mind that Walters was hired really late going into last season. He this is really his first roster transition this year. Like, he had guys that they were kind of waiting to see who Purdue was going to hire, what was going to happen, and then I think they kind of got stuck. And he kind of cryptically said that some of his coaches shows that you're going to be surprised by some of the guys that transfer out, but we want guys that are a good fit for our program and what we're going to do here. And it was surprising seeing guys like Deion Burks leave. It was our leading receiver. And, seeing Nick Scorton, who led the Big Ten at sacks, leave. Too. So, yeah. But we got some really good bodies in the portal. And I think one thing that could add to the context of this list is, what's your quarterback situation? Are you returning a quarterback, and what was his production like in the Big Ten? Because, you talked to Eric over the OHI podcast with you there, JR, and there's some nervousness, I think, amongst these fan bases. Every time you get a transfer quarterback, it does not always work out. You get some tandem Mordecai's in there, and is Will Howard going to work out for Ohio State? Will Rogers, Dylan Gabriel, like all those guys, are they really going to hit? Because that's the biggest key, right? That's the most important position in football, is your quarterback. And you could have a lot of returning production. You could stack up running back and receiver, but if you don't have a guy that can throw the ball in this day and age in college football, it's not going to matter really what your returning production and what your portal ranking is.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you ask any Ohio State fan, and you ask them honestly, and they give you an honest answer. Like, the quarterback position is something that Ohio State fans are definitely concerned about. And I think it helps that you brought Chip Kelly in, who is known for doing a better job of running the ball. And you have the tandem duo of Judkins and why am I blanking on his name? Henderson. I love that guy. I don't know why I'm blanking on his name, but Trevion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. Like, that's a huge addition to get that duo in the backfield. Yep. But you did lose Dallin Hayden, and Ohio State has struggled to keep their running backs healthy. So you lose your third guy, who would have been really, really good, and now you're relying on a freshman. Two true freshmen to be your 3 and 4 in the running back room. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I hope that Chip Kelly uses Will Howard as the battering ram quarterback that he needs to use him as. Not that I don't trust Will Howard as a thrower. I think he would have been benched at Kansas State is being used a little bit too much. I talked to the guys over at Cocaine Willie, and that's not exactly the situation from the way they tell it. Maybe they're just being nice to me, but that's not exactly the way it was going. But I think that Will Howard is a very capable quarterback, and we'll see if capable can win a national championship. Capable can win you 10, 11 games, but that's not what Ohio State fans want to see. They want to see national championships. So ask Kyle McCord if 11 games is enough. Some other teams on here that I want to highlight and get you guys' thoughts on really fast. Illinois, 60th in returning production, 51st in portal rankings. It's kind of middle of the pack there with both of them. Are we expecting a backslide from Illinois this year? Terrence Brooks is coming in, so that does help the secondary there a little bit after losing some guys, but Luke Altmaier coming back. are we buying anything better for Illinois this year, or are we thinking maybe a backslide from what it was last year?
Yeah, I'm thinking that they're going to not be happy. I think, I, as much as I talked about Matt Rule being an experienced coach and he couldn't finish last year, Bielema is a very experienced coach, and they did not get a bowl game last year. And they got, as much as there was especially online rivalry between, before the basketball stuff happened with Illinois and Purdue, there was a bit of a back and forth on Twitter and on X between the football programs, because obviously we got their defensive coordinator as our head coach. And so there was this back and forth. And then what happened when we played Illinois? We beat the pants off of them. So, and then again, this offseason, we're stealing guys from them, right? We got Reggie Love to add to Devin Mockabee to have a pretty decent rushing attack this year. So, I think Illinois, I think this could be possibly the last year for Bielema, and they're looking elsewhere to try to find a new, younger, up-and-coming coach.
Wow. Especially after coming off that 2022 season, which was really, really good. They almost won the Big Ten West that year. Yeah, that's crazy to think about. Travis, you have any thoughts on Illinois?
I would say that I think they're probably at status quo with what they did last year. It's going to be about the same. I have no expectations of them, getting better or worse, honestly. But
yeah. Two more teams I want to point out, and then we'll get out of here unless the commenters say anything that I want to address. Wisconsin, 30th in returning production, 24th in portal rankings. They lost their quarterback, Tyler Van Dyke, coming in. I think it's impressive whenever you're up, around top 30, top 40, and you lose your starting quarterback, just because you lose so much production by losing that. So, Tyler Van Dyke coming in, you lost your starting quarterback. You still have, and Braylon Allen leaving, which, he was injured last year. So that would make sense why the returning production isn't lower. But still, Wisconsin, 30th, 24th. Travis, you feeling any better about Luke Fickell's chances this year, seeing these numbers?
So like I said earlier, I think they're a team that could be better than they were last year, but it won't reflect in their final record because of what they have to go up against. I think adding an arm like Tyler Van Dyke to that offense to run that offense and, be NFL caliber quarterback like some people think he is, helps the offense that Fickell wants to run much more than what he was working with Mordecai last year. Now the running game outside of Braylon Allen is another question there, but the offense last year wasn't what he wanted it to be, especially in some really key games, and they need to take steps on the offensive end if he wants to continue building that up and actually improving the team.
Yeah. The offense last year definitely hurt him in a few areas. With they would have won the Ohio State game if they would have just had the offense step up. But of course, they had Lockie and was that the game Akers was in? I think they had their second string quarterback and third string running back. So kind of Ohio State kind of got a break there because Kyle McCord wasn't having the best game. I think he got injured that game too. But Russ, any thoughts on Wisconsin?
Yeah, you kind of talked about it a little bit. Like I said, the context of this chart, it looks like it's pretty much running back and wide receiver, like rushing and receiving yards, production-wise, nothing to do with the quarterback. And so the quarterback situation could add a lot of context to what these rankings could really mean moving forward. And, we talked about on the basketball side of things, football is similar. You play the transfer portal game and it can work and you can hit, but it's also like you're just turning a half your hand in poker and you're going, hope it works. And sure it will. Sometimes it'll hit and you'll have a great season, but it could also turn into another repeat of Tanner Mordecai last year. And you're looking at maybe on the brink of missing a bowl game.
Yeah, and Tanner Mordecai being hurt last year definitely hurt them at times, and I always forget if it's Locke or Lockie. And he wasn't bad. He wasn't a difference maker at quarterback for you. Which
and Chesney Lucy was a serviceable running back last year. He had some good performances.
Yeah,
so I think their running back, their running situation is less of a question mark than what Van Dyke's going to do coming in.
Yeah. Last one, most polarizing team, I think, in the Big Ten. You ask some people and it's like, nope, they got to prove it. This team stinks. And then you ask their fans and they're like, we're going to the playoffs, top 4 seed coming in at you. USC, Lincoln Riley. I saw Bud Elliott had him 30th on his coaching rankings. I am no Lincoln Riley defender, but the guy did go to the playoffs multiple times and did bring USC back from 5-7 to a double-digit win season or something like that. So I get last year was bad, but I'm not, like I said, I'm no Lincoln Riley defender, but still 30th is pretty low. But they do have 76 returning production, which isn't great, but 19th portal class. Miller Moss threw 6 touchdowns against Louisville, so the hype is definitely there for him. Travis, are you in the boat of USC is going to be just fine? USC is going to playoffs, or are you kind of like USC? Don't worry about them. Defense stinks.
More the second, but not really either. It's I don't think they're going to the playoff, but I don't think it's as bad as some people think it is. I think there's stuff to work with there. I think one of the things that they're going to have to get used to is the travel in the middle of the season, obviously, but also the landscape of a new conference and the difficulty. For being honest, in the Pac-12, there weren't a lot of defenses that they were playing that they're going to face in the Big Ten. That's just a reality. So they're kind of working with some new pieces over there, but I think they'll be okay eventually. Just I don't know. Obviously for them, it's always playoff or bust. I don't think they're good enough to that yet, but I think they'll be fine at least.
Fine at least.
Yeah, I mean,
I love that prediction.
There's. I mean, I don't know. There's not a better way to put it, unfortunately.
Yeah. No, I just that was a fun way to put it. So I like that. Russ, your thoughts on USC?
Yeah, I mean, you said it first there. It's a lot about what have you done for me lately. That's what college football is now anymore, and college sports as a whole. Because, what I said about Bielema, it's no indictment on him as a coach. Bielema, Matt Rule, they're great head coaches, but, they have short leashes because everybody wants to be successful right now. And with the transfer portal and NIL, it's possible to do that. And so, you come into the season with a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback and these expectations of going to the playoff and you go 7-5. That it's
exactly.
you have another middling year and people are ready to pull the string because, there's not all the programs in the Big Ten are not this way. Like I said, Northwestern, like in Indiana, even Purdue, they're happy. Go to a bowl game and you're successful. But, the USCs, the, Nebraskas, the Michigans, the Ohio States, they want double-digit wins and playoff appearances. So USC, I think, is in that category. And, I'm not saying they're wrong for that. They've had a lot of storied performances, but, it's like Travis said, the Big Ten defense is not the Pac-12 defense. It's a different game. You got to adapt. Even coming from the Big 12, Nebraska was very successful, and they did have some carryover in some good early years. But you got to build your program and your team differently, and then recruiting when you're playing in the Big Ten, it could be a little more difficult. Come play at USC where we could go play at Michigan and Minnesota and Rutgers. It's quite the pitch.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. This is the Sean's question here. Anyone else think the Pac-12 teams will struggle to adjust? I'm thinking that the O-line, D-line for those teams will get beat up playing full Big Ten schedule. Louisville was gutted in the bowl game so hard to USC. Yeah, we talked about this when we had our very first, is Oregon going to be good in the Big Ten video? And Oregon fans were immediately upset because I had 3 Nebraska guys on, and they were all like, anybody coming to the Big Ten is going to have a hard time, which you would understand from their experience. But I think Oregon's the best set up with the O-line and the D-line, especially with who they've been able to grab in the portal. I mean, Travis, better than anybody, the addition of Derek Harmon is a very good one for them. So that's
a big loss for us.
Yeah. I don't even think he's their number one guy. I think he might be 2 or 3 behind I can't remember the guy's name, but there's another guy in there, Bear Alexander. I think
the Georgia guy.
The portal twice, but now he's back or something like that. But yeah, I think that they're going to be set up pretty well on the Bear Alexander's USC.
Yeah, he's USC.
Oregon's guy, I can't remember who he is, but yeah, I think Oregon set up well on the D-line. I don't know about USC simply because of the depth. Barry Alexander is good, but I question who they have behind him. And then UCLA, I just think it's going to take them a year or two after Deshaun Foster got in there. And Washington, we'll see. I don't know. There's just a complete question mark for me.
Yeah, and Oregon's schedule is set up nice. I'm happy. I mean, if I'm Oregon, I'm happy because you get Ohio State at home pretty early on. And, Michigan, like we talked about, the question marks they could have. So you travel to Michigan may not be as daunting as what it seems right now once you get 6 weeks into the season. So, Oregon's, I think, set up to succeed pretty well early in the Big Ten.
I agree. All right. Hey, thank you so much for coming in, guys. Thank you for all the comments, everybody. I think we've addressed most of them that were talking to us. If not, I do apologize, but we want to appreciate or say thank you and give appreciation to Travis and Russ. So please stick around as they tell you where that you can find their podcast. Travis, where can people find Spartan Savants?
Yeah, you can check us out on obviously the collegehuddle.com, and then we are also on we have our Twitter or X page. I'm always going to call it Twitter, but it's X. It's X now apparently.
Yeah. No, I do the same
which
thing.
is at Spartan Savants, and then we mostly post our stuff on YouTube, our Spartan Savants YouTube channel, so you can subscribe, follow that, and all that. And then we're on basically every other podcasting platform that you can find wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find it. We're set up to go everywhere, I think. So
Spartan Savants.
Spartan Savants, easily findable.
There we go. I love it. Russ, where can people find Boiler Express?
Yeah, similar to what Travis said. Just search Boiler Express wherever you listen or watch. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're on there. At Boiler_Express on Twitter or Instagram. We're posting content on there as well. So come check us out.
Very good. All right. Hey, thanks everybody for watching. We appreciate it. Thank you everybody, or thank you Travis and Russ for coming in here. We appreciate it. We'll be back next Tuesday. Zach will be back with us. And if you're a basketball fan, come back tomorrow night. We're going to be starting a little bit later. It'll be at 9:30 instead of 9 because we're having Burke White from Often Dawn to join us. And I think he's got a baseball game for his kid, and he said he's not going to be home until 9:30. So we understand that, but yes, I will give that to you, Brian. There, go Bucks. See everybody. Have a good one.
Boiler